Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, coming to you live to recap Giants Day 3 of the NFL Draft 2024. Obviously, draft's still rolling on. We're in round 6, but the Giants do not have any draft picks left. So we'll be monitoring just in case potentially we see something where the Giants trade back into round 6 or round 7, which I find pretty unlikely, Nick, but we're going to keep an eye out in case it happens because we don't want to be caught off guard. But we're going to do this show now as if this is the end of day 3, and they've made 3 draft picks on day 3. And I'll just, start this thing off by saying, obviously, anyone who's listened to this podcast and who's listened to every one of our shows, and if you're new to the podcast, you might not know this, but for those who have listened to all the shows, listen to our My Guys show, which was only a few days before the draft. And the Giants drafted 2 of my guys today in the day 3 of the NFL draft. I put them on my targets list. They were both 2 of my top 5 targets for the day before day 3 even started with round 4. Giants got 1 at the beginning of round 4. That's about where the value I expected. And then they patiently waited at the other position at running back. And a lot of good running backs came off the board as they didn't have that 5th round pick after they traded to the Panthers. And yet they still got a guy who I had as my 3rd favorite running back to get on today. And I could have even been argued into having as my 2nd favorite running back. The more I think about it, the more I like him. We're going to go over both of these players. The Giants selected Theo Johnson, the tight end out of Penn State, and Tyrone Tracy, the converted receiver running back out of Purdue. And then they also got a linebacker there, finally. Darius Musal, the linebacker out of, I hope that's how you say his name, Nick. I have no idea. The linebacker out of UCLA.
You sounded so confident that I was like, okay, Dan. I was like, damn, bro, you came prepared to say this dude's name. And it looks like it could be pronounced that way. So I'm going to roll with it for this episode at least.
Yeah. Maybe it's Darius Musal. Darius Musal, the linebacker tackling machine out of, or at least the collegiate level he was, out of UCLA. So let's start with you, Nick. How are you feeling about their day 3 haul?
Hey, they didn't do any trades in this draft. They didn't move up. They didn't move down. And Theo Johnson was a my guy as well. I thought he was going to absolutely blow up the combine based on the tape that I saw. And he went to the combine and he did that. And I actually had a low 2nd round grade on him. So to get him at 107 was something that I'm very excited about. I understand that he wasn't the most productive guy at Penn State. Penn State's offense is a little bit strange in that regard, but this is somebody who has a dual threat, who could be a dual threat type of option at the tight end position. He can block, or at least he has the frame to, and he has some solid tape block. I'm not going to sit here and act like he is a dominant blocker, but he's a functioning blocker in a 12 personnel double Y set with him and Daniel Bellinger. Those are 2+ blockers, and you got Chris Manhertz and Jack Stoll. So the tight end room looks so much better right now, Dan, when it comes to blocking. Now, I love the Tyrone Tracy Jr. pick. I do, because if you watched him at Iowa, and everyone who listens to this podcast knows Iowa, not exactly the passing offense that many would like to watch. It's actually a pretty gross offense, and it was his entire time there with Brian Ferentz as their offensive coordinator, not to throw the guy under the bus. But he goes to Purdue, man, and in the last year, I don't like that he's a little bit older, but in his last year, it's like, hey, can you switch to running back? You would think that this guy would just be like, have absolutely no clue how to read blocks in front of him. I think he could be a little bit more patient, but holy shit, dude, he has tape where he's reading blocks. He is exercising some patience, and he is hitting the hole, and then the contact balance. He's very, very, very tough with the football in his hands, and he's breaking tackles. And I wouldn't say he's like Shady McCoy type of fluidity, but he can make you miss in an instant too. He's pretty sudden with his quick one-cut ability. So adding him, I think that's a core special teamer who might push Gunnar Olszewski for some return value as well on this roster. And I just think you can design so many cool packages with him. We know Joe Shane wanted to get explosive on offense. Well, Malik Neighbors helped that. So did Tyrone Tracy Jr. Don't have much on the UCLA kid. No, he has a ton of special teams experience. He's going to just be depth behind McFadden and Bobby Okereke at this point. And we'll follow back in the coming days and weeks to discuss him as I get more eyes on tape.
Yeah, just to give a little quick rundown of what we'll probably do today on this show. We'll discuss a little bit about Musal, but not much, because I haven't, I said this every draft, but I'm not going to get to every prospect. I didn't watch any of him at all, or really track any of him before this draft. And that's going to happen with a lot of the 5th and 6th rounders. Luckily, the Giants drafted 2 players I got a chance to watch a lot of in this draft today. So that's going to be good. So today's show is mostly going to be about those 2 players that we've touched on already. But we're going to get really in depth onto them. We'll take some questions after that. And then tomorrow's show, as we've done in the past, we're going to do a kind of overall thoughts on the draft, 30,000-foot view, and then also specifically grade stuff, get into some of the nitty-gritty of it as far as directions they've gone, what they did, what they accomplished, decision not to take a quarterback at all in this draft class, things like that. That's Sunday. Then, obviously, we're going to get to some UDFA tape. I think we'll probably do that probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday type of thing. Within that range, you'll probably get more tape from all the guys in this class, including then Musau, who we won't have much on today, but obviously as we get a chance to watch him. One thing I will say on him now is that he was a Russell Brown favorite.
Yes.
We had Russell Brown on our sleepers show. He actually graded him as a top 101 player in this class. He was a big fan of his. And so he said that when we get a chance to, we're going to like to watch the tape. And I get the feeling just from the little that I have seen, Nick, that he's going to be a fun guy on tape to watch. Projection wise, that's the other story. Like, how does that work at the NFL level? But they've done a good job of taking some of these guys who are maybe, some would say, a bit undersized at linebacker, Micah McFadden, for example, and finding a role for them within the defense. So I'm not totally ruling him out just yet as just a special teams type. But remember, when you take these 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, typically they might just be special teamers. But as we'll get to in a little bit, Nick, I got to say this, like, I think Tyrone Tracy is going to immediately help the Giants on special teams in that new kickoff role, like you talked about. But I don't think it's limited to that, even in year one. Like, I think about what you said at the end of that breakdown. We'll get into more of him. I want to start with Johnson, but I want to start by just saying this. And I think about, like, the Giants offense with Mike Kafka and Brian Dable, the amount of pre-snap motion they use, the amount of just playing to Daniel Jones's skill set, which is, quick throws, underneath drags, let him get the ball out fast, let him do layup throws, don't make him process too much information at once. And I think about change of direction, and I think about explosiveness, and I think about contact balance, yards after contact. Those two prospects, Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy, were two of the best in all of college football when it came to what I just said: changing directions, yards after contact per attempt for both of them, yards after catch per attempt for Neighbors, it will be, but also after contact. And then in explosiveness, in just ability to force and create missed tackles in space. This stat stands out to me about Tyrone Tracy. And it's courtesy, let me just make sure I have it. It's courtesy of Josh Norris. He said just 1.8 yards were handed to Tyrone Tracy before contact last year. 71% of Tracy's yards were created on his own, either via forced missed tackles, like you said, getting skinny through holes, change of direction, or his 4.4 yards after contact per attempt, which was the most of any running back in the entire class. So, and we already know what Neighbors is in that regard. The Giants have, in my mind, added two, what have we said, Nick? For 2 straight years, we are dead last in explosive plays. We can't create explosive plays. The only ones we created were through Barkley the year before, but they were still dead last even with Barkley. Now we have 2 guys who can create explosive plays. So for me, and we'll get to a little bit more, but I'm not so sure it's going to take Tracy that long to get on the field, not as a lead back. And I don't think that's what he's drafted to be. Like, we're not getting, like we talked about, Estime might be that guy. I don't think that's ever what he's going to be. But I don't know if that matters, because I don't want lead back offense anymore. I'm done with that. We had it with Barkley. I want what the Bills had. I want what some of these other teams have built out, which is a the Niners rotational. Now they have McCaffrey, but before that, rotational role where different guys fill different roles within your offense. So I'm excited about him. If there's anything you want to say on that, let's do it. I want to give you that opportunity, and then I want to talk Theo before we get back into Tracy.
Okay, if we're gonna, so I actually want to take a little dive into Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, so let's do that. We can jump around. I think it's fine.
Okay, yeah, I think the listeners don't mind. So with Tyrone Tracy, look, Eric Gray was selected last year, and obviously Saquon Barkley's not on the roster anymore. Devin Singletary needs a running mate. We're not going to give Devin Singletary 20 carries a game. So I'm just wondering what this Tyrone Tracy Jr. draft selection means for Eric Gray, and just kind of going through the tape on both players. I don't think Tyrone Tracy, I know he ran like a 4.48. I don't think he has his breakaway speed. There were plenty of times on tape where he was tracked down. He has similar, I would say, change of direction in the short areas, right? Like can make you miss in a phone booth that Eric Gray had. But there is this element that Tyrone Tracy possesses, and it's not just from the receiving standpoint, which is elite because he was a former wide receiver, but it's just his ability to take on the contact and then just stay upright.
Yeah.
The contact balance is probably the best way to describe it, but holy crap, man. People who tried to tackle him high, he had the core strength to dip underneath that, spin off, and then maintain his balance through what the defenders were trying to just throw him at the deck. Like if you don't square him up, he's a very difficult guy to bring down to the ground. And the Giants got this guy this late. So I'm just wondering, I think Eric Gray will still have a role on this team, but I don't know, man. Like, does this Tyrone Tracy pick, what does that make you feel about Eric Gray?
I think he's going to be RB3 for this team this year. And I think the Giants, like, look, if you look back at some of the past years of Brandon Bede's builds with the Bills, that was
That's
weird to
tough,
say.
man.
That's tough to
Damn.
say.
Yeah.
Builds with the Bills. They had three backs at times. Even last year, at times before, maybe it was the year before. I know they had Latavius Cook, and was there one more? There was like not Ty Johnson. What, I think it might have been Ty Johnson. There's another back getting some snaps early in the year before they changed coordinators. And then before that, the year before, they had three backs. They traded for the Colts back who got injured, Nyheim Hines, and then they had the two, Moss and Singletary. I think the idea is a three-back system, but my guess, Nick, is if Tyrone Tracy can be as good as I think he can be in year one, because I'll be honest with you, I don't like. There are nuances to playing running back that I think he needs to learn, and they're playing the actual running back position. My knocks on Tracy right now are essentially just playing the running back position, something he hasn't done a lot of, and the age. But I don't personally care about the age as much as others do because it's running back. I never focus on age with that. I'm basically planning to recycle them, pay them on their rookie deals, and that's it. And also, he doesn't have tread on his tires. Not your normal older running back because he played wide receiver. And he played wide receiver in an Iowa offense where you don't get a lot of touches and you don't get hit a lot because you're not involved that much. So as far as what he can do in year one, my thought is there's a chance that he could just get on the field, Nick, and create enough explosive plays for an offense so bereft of explosive plays that he just earns a different role. So I think you might be right. I think as we get through the season, we're in the midpoint, in the later stage of the season, 2024, Gray may get phased out of the offense. It's possible because I see Gray as kind of like a Singletary type, and they already have that on their offense. And I don't know if they're going to take Singletary's touches and give him to Gray, especially after paying him. But what Tracy offers the offense, no offense to these dudes because I like them, but Singletary and Gray, they don't have that. Like you said, it's not breakaway speed maybe, but there are moments of change of direction that I don't even think Eric Gray has. And I do think he's good in a phone booth, but it's a different kind of change of direction. And then the yards after contact, the strength, it's just not and those are strong players, Singletary and Gray, for their size, but they're not strong like Tracy is strong. I mean, this is a guy who averaged the most yards after contact per attempt of any running back in this class. And you watch him and he finishes forward. And some of the clips even you just put up today, Nick, I think you put up like 3 or 4 film clips on him since he was drafted. Some of those tackles that he's breaking out of, it's insane. Like, no offense to these dudes. Singletary's not doing that, and neither is Eric Gray. That's just not what's happening when you watch them on tape. A lot of backs aren't going to do that. They don't have that kind of strength and size. And I guess the word you use, contact balance. And I think another thing with him, I think he's a really tough player. And I know that's been a big theme of this draft class. Like,
it is
tough, muddy players. And I think he's that too. So think you could be right. Like, I think it starts though with a 3-back rotation. Because I think he'll do enough in training camp, Tracy, to get on the field. Because again, he offers them a chance at explosive plays. How many people on this offense offer them that? Not to say Hyatt doesn't, but Hyatt's chance of explosive plays relies on the quarterback, right? The quarterback has to be able to get him the ball in the vertical plane when he gets open. And he was open a lot last year, and the quarterback didn't get him the ball. But these two guys, Tracy and Neighbors, they don't rely on the quarterback, really.
I'll say this. He ran predominantly out of a shotgun line at Purdue.
Ton of gun.
And his pass protection, I think he's a willing pass protector. And I think you nailed it with the toughness call. That is the theme of this draft. That's what Joe Shane preaches. It's one of the 3 tenets of the New York Giants: smart, tough, and dependable. Tyrone Tracy is certainly tough. He's going to need to develop with pass protection. But Eric Gray is also a running back who has not proven to be a good pass protector. He was not a good pass protector at Oklahoma last year. It was last year. It was 2 years ago, I guess you could say now. It's one of the reasons why we were a little bit skeptical at the draft pick at the time, but we liked the short area quickness. But Tyrone Tracy also has that. Now, towards the end of the season, you started seeing, and specifically against Nebraska, I think it was like week 9, you started seeing Tyrone Tracy pick up blitzes at a more efficient rate than before. There was a play against Northwestern where he got absolutely just bowled over. Wasn't a great look. So that could still be ironed out. The guy's been a running back for 1 year.
Right.
Now, what does that say? How is he going to read blocks and exercise patience and start to use some of those more nuanced traits when it's single back and when it's I formation or offset I, because he's not used to doing that? That's a question that he's going to have to prove, but he'll be given the opportunity to do so. I just think there's more upside with this type of player other than these other running backs who are on this roster, not named Devin Singletary, who you would say is the 1A right now, de facto.
Yeah, you're right. And I think early on, ultimately, they're going to use him in ways that don't really force him to be that kind of back just yet. I agree with you. I hope he evolves into that. That's what the Giants are hoping too. But they can use him early in motion, pre-snap, use him in space, and just bring him on the field. Like they kind of remember they had Wan'Dale Robinson in the backfield sometimes last season. That could be Tracy now in this season if he evolves the way he evolves. I mean, I said this like during our My Guys episode, and I'll say it again. When I watch him play, I get vibes of pre-injury David Johnson. And people think like, oh, that's crazy because he was amazing before the injury of the Cardinals. But David Johnson at Northern Iowa was not amazing. He was a project, a lot like Tracy. He ran. People would always talk about, wow, do you see how bad this guy is at processing blocks and running behind his blocks and understanding how to do the nuances of the running back position? He learned that when he got to the NFL, and he got better at that. But what you couldn't teach about him was explosive plays that he was able to add. And he's a faster player. So he's a faster version of Tracy. Yeah. Though I think Tracy is a stronger player through contact, in my personal opinion. And I kind of, in some ways, like his change of direction a little bit better and how he's skinny he gets through some of these creases. But again, Johnson, more long speed. But Johnson, to become that explosive player, had to learn nuances of position. He had the receiving skills coming in like Tracy does, and he had all these other traits, but he had to learn that. And some of the stuff, I mean, look, if you're thinking about how he can help the Giants right away, in my opinion, it's with his creativity, because I think he is creative. He's not a nuanced runner yet, but I think he's creative in space. Jet sweeps, push passes. These are instant offense, explosive plays the Giants desperately need to find in their offense some way or another. And it's not going to come. It may not come, I should say, through the quarterback position. It may come to that position, but it may not. And this is another way to do it. And according to Pro Football Focus, Nick, Tyrone Tracy's 23.1 explosive run rate was the best in this year's class, 97th percentile among all prospects since 2018. So, and a 90.5 rushing grade this year in the Big Ten was third among Big Ten running backs. But that explosive run rate, 97th percentile, third best since, or 97th percentile since 2018. That shows that maybe if he doesn't have the long speed, he still has the ability to create those 20, 25, 30-yard plays for the Giants, hopefully this year. So I'm really excited about him being the rare occasion, Nick, of a fifth-round draft pick actually improving your offense in year one, because that doesn't happen a lot. I mean, it happened with Puka Nacua, obviously, last year at the Rams. Yeah. So people look at that example like it can happen, and it can happen. I'm not here to tell you it's definitely going to happen, but I think there's a possibility it happens with this guy, especially the way the Giants offense is set up with this need for just like layup throws and quick explosive generators.
They just got to pick and choose when they use him. But I'm right there with you, man. I'm excited about this draft pick in the 5th round. And I think you can also line him up at receiver if you want to, if the injuries start to happen. Because he has, dude, I went back and I watched some 2022. They were more so highlights than just film of him as a wide receiver. But you see him flashing hands. There was this one play, I think it was against Northwestern, where he caught this little button hook over the middle of the field. And somebody tried to tackle him around the waist, swing him to the ground. And he just broke right through it and then just darted towards the sideline and took it for about a 49-yard touchdown. And it's just those types of plays where Malik Neighbors has this, obviously a little bit more. It's these defenders who go in and try to tackle these players high.
Yep.
They do such a good job, Neighbors and Tracy Jr., of sinking their weight and reestablishing equilibrium. Once that tackle attempt, if you don't wrap up, he does such a good job shaking that defender off and then just getting north. And that's something that we loved about Malik Neighbors. And you kind of see that with Tyrone Tracy Jr. Like these defenders going up against the Giants, they really need to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to tackling. They need to wrap up and drive down to the deck. Because again, short area quickness is another trait that Tracy possesses. He's not going to make it easy for you to line him up and tackle him. Neither with Neighbors.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You know, it had me thinking, Nick. I think about typically like these, and I want to find it. Maybe you can, if I can't while I'm talking, the athletic profile for Tracy, the RAS, because I just want to show if we can show them how insane it is for this kid. It's through the roof. I mean, both these guys, Theo Johnson and Tyrone Tracy, are insane from an athletic standpoint. But with that said, Nick, like something you said there stood out to me, and I think about a lot of these like converts, these wide receivers who convert to running back or vice versa, and there's always like their traits that they're missing. Specifically, if it's a wide receiver who converts to running back, I feel like who's the guy who recently did like Ty Montgomery, for example. In my mind, Ty Montgomery doesn't have the same kind of short area contact balance, or like you said, that ability to kind of you go through the arms, somebody tries to arm tackle him, and he's just not getting that player down because he's a receiver who converted to running back, and it's to be expected. But this guy's a little bit different from that standpoint, from a strength and contact balance standpoint. Like just like we were saying with Trey Benson, when we watch his tape, like you cannot bring this dude down with initial arm tackles. Like that's part of his game. Tyrone Tracy. He's not your typical wide receiver convert. And one other thing you mentioned earlier, Nick, that I wanted to bring up, you said as you went through and you saw he's new to the running back position, but you felt like he got better as a pass blocker. That's backed up by the stats. And this is courtesy of, I'm trying to remember who had this. I'd love to give the right attribution here. It might have been Eric Galco, I think it was, who said in his evaluation of his tape. Galco said he's got a very good toughness and demeanor as a pass blocker. He says he's got a ways to go, but the last 5 games of his season, he showed not only a markedly improved pass blocking technique, but also consistently showed the effort and toughness, which was then evidenced by his PFF college pass pro grades, which were the best of his career in his last 5 games. So I just thought those 2 things were really interesting to bring up: that toughness, that inability to take him down through arm contact and initial contact, and then that improvement in the pass protection area.
I have that same exact quote up right here with the RAS
Nice.
score. yeah, Eric Galco. I'm guessing, Tyrone Tracy Jr. Eric Galco is the director, I believe, is the designation he has of the East-West Shrine Bowl. And Tyrone Tracy Jr. went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, right? So this is one of the better players who probably came out of that event on offense, one of the more unique ones, as Eric Galco says. And I'm excited for it, man. I am. And this is the theme. You wanted to get more explosive on offense. You found the wide receiver. You get this running back wide receiver, which is funny because Wan'Dale Robinson used to be a running back when he was in college. And
they like this because that's how the offense runs with Kafka and Dable. Like, there's a ton of this pre-snap motion, get the ball out into space.
Yes, there's a ton of pre-snap motion, get the ball out into space. And I think if he can just develop a little bit more with the nuances, and I still think it was there, though. You watched him running counter, right, and there wouldn't be a direct path. It wouldn't be just completely clear for him to hit the hole, and he would find a way to get skinny through the correct hole. I still think there are times where he can anticipate the linebacker and kind of a little bit better, and he took advantage of a lot of lighter boxes. I actually thought Purdue's offensive line wasn't as bad as I expected. There were a lot of plays where Purdue offensive linemen were kind of tossing around these Big Ten defenders, and I was like, okay, like that's pretty sweet out of these shotgun runs. But overall, man, this is a good 5th round pick, and I really like the 4th round pick too. I mean, Theo Johnson was one of our guys, and now he's going to come in and be that, I guess, number 2 tight end behind Daniel Bellinger, and they'll probably rotate the 4 tight ends that they have if they do decide to keep 4 on the roster. I mean, right now they have 5 with Lawrence Cager there, but he's a completely different body type and skill set than the other 4 tight ends.
I want to touch on a few more things with Tracy, and then we'll move to Theo. Just keeping that RAS score up for a second. Look, I've seen running backs with a profile that is similar from a height, weight, 40-yard dash, 10-yard split, vertical, broad jump, all elite. But to me, the big thing that stands out here is the shuttle and the 3-cone. Those are insane. Yes. Shuttle and 3. And it's not like, oh, he had a great shuttle and 3-cone like what's that dude from Kuntz or whatever his name was, the tight end, like, oh, this testing, and it doesn't really look like it. No. Like you said, when you watch him, his ability, what are you laughing at? That I almost said that word weird. I know.
Yes.
I know what I almost did there.
Yeah.
But it would have been bad on there. But no, when you watch him, that change of direction, shuttle 3-cone, it's obvious on tape when it comes to Tracy. And that's what has me most excited. Like, this could be an insane change of direction type athlete. The Giants, in my mind, haven't really had that in a long time at receiver or running back. I think Neighbors is also in that range. And I would say Robinson is in that range too. So they've had that at receiver, but running back, look, Barkley was a big change of direction guy. He still kind of is, but I would love to see if Barkley could still run the shuttle and 3-cone at those ranges. Not to get too much on Barkley, but even if you just take him out of it, with what's left on the roster, no one's really within that range, while also having the size and the speed and the vertical and the broad and all those explosive jumps as well. And then one thing you said, sorry, you want to say something first?
I was just going to say, man, Tyrone Tracy had this play against Illinois, just because we're talking about his crazy agility, where he didn't really press the line of scrimmage. It was just a halfback shotgun, obviously, handoff, zone run, where the defender got away from his block, contained him, and holy crap, man, Tyrone Tracy out-juked this guy so badly, and it made him look so terrible. And he has some of these all throughout his tape, right, where he makes these defenders look absolutely silly with his jump cut and his juke moves. So he has those quick feet, and he gets a lot of explosiveness when he does decide to put that foot in the ground and just use those lateral quickness and lateral jumping skills.
And I want everyone who, this is bringing back to what you said earlier, Nick, I want everyone who follows Nick on Twitter to go find the plays talking about that counter run against Michigan, because that ability, how skinny he gets through that hole, that's like a unique thing that you don't see from running back prospects a lot. And it's something that I think about, like, as far as what are you doing when you translate? Can you project these guys to the NFL when the game's faster and the holes are shorter? Like, the ability to do that get skinny through contact. It's surprising. Like, he's a big back and he plays really, he's able to get skinny through some of these holes and play and almost look like a slender back. I really like him. I got a couple other fun points and stats about him, Nick, that I wanted to touch on before we get to Theo Johnson, though. The first one, this is a fun stat. As a sophomore wide receiver at Iowa, Nick, Iowa of all places, his yards per route run was better than any single season that A.D. Mitchell or Keon Coleman had, and that was as a receiver at Iowa. Just a funny stat. Obviously, yards per route run is the most sticky stat year over year, one of the best projectable stats, but that's more of just like Keon Coleman was playing with Jordan Travis, and A.D. Mitchell didn't get a lot, and Quinn Ewers was off target a lot, but still,
who the hell was Tyrone Tracy playing with?
That's a good point. That was Tyrone Tracy playing with an Iowa at quarterback. I don't know, and I know one of our friends, Don, knows, but he probably wants to forget that one, Nick.
So just to talk about his receiving profile, like he does have natural receiving, like he's going to be a very good receiver at the running back position in 2019, and that was his second year in college. He's an older dude. Let's not forget that. He had 66 targets, 36 catches for 589 yards with 3 touchdowns. Receiving, he caught 50. That's 54.5%. That was by far and away his most productive season as a wide receiver. He never had more than 200 yards receiving in the rest of his college career. Now, that's not necessarily a negative reflection of Tyrone Tracy. It's more so just speaking to the fact that he did play in Iowa's offense. But it's
like George Kittle had like 500 career yards at Iowa or something insane. I don't know if that's the exact number, but you guys should look it up. George Kittle's career yardage at Iowa is like, it's almost embarrassing that Iowa couldn't get him the ball.
I'm pretty sure his offensive coordinator his entire time at Iowa was Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's son. And that, like, I don't want to throw Brian Ferentz under the bus, but Brian Ferentz was not a good offensive coordinator, had to step down. I think that was after the 2021 season, might have been after the 2022 season. A little
bit of nepotism there.
And by that point, he was at Purdue.
Little Neppy going on there.
Little Neps.
Your son as your offensive coordinator. I don't know if I love that. It worked out for Belichick. See, Belichick's kind of pretty solid at it. But a couple other things I wanted to bring up. Just a funny story about him. When he was in high school, Nick, his high school coach tried to get him to convert to running back. Then he said, no, I'm a receiver. I'm not going to do it. He goes to Iowa, he plays receiver. Final season, he transfers to Purdue to become a running back. And it's the same coach who was his coach in high school, now his coach there at Purdue. Just things come full circle. It's just a very interesting thing there. He had 33 carries before converting to running back in 2023. So this is a really raw player when it comes to that. But still, despite that, again, averaged the most yards after contact and was second in missed forced tackles per attempt. Those are always the two metrics I care the most about at the running back position. Forced missed tackle rate and yards after contact. They are the ones that show, in my opinion, what you're doing independent of your supporting cast. He had 6.34 yards per carry last year, which I thought was really, really interesting. 21.9% of his total carries and rushing attempts in 2023 were a 10-plus yard run. That was top 5 of all running backs. It's another, and I know, running from that shotgun, it helps with that system, but still, man, like that production level is just crazy. He also had a really, really good evaluation and grade from Greg Gassell, who obviously we've talked about, but he's the godfather of film. Greg Gassell, just to wrap it up, said Tracy will only get better as a runner with more experience, but he has already showed strong traits with his natural quickness and burst and his elusiveness, making defenders miss in multiple ways. Perhaps most impressively, he showed more than functional physicality and competitive toughness to finish runs. Overall, Tracy was one of my favorite backs to watch, and I believe he's an ascending talent. I'm looking forward to seeing who drafts him and how he's deployed. And I'm also looking forward to see how Kafka and Dable deploy this guy, to be honest.
Same here. And it's not like he was just running into, 5-man boxes, 6-man boxes. He predominantly did run into 6-man boxes because of Purdue's offense, but there were plays against Illinois where it was 7, 8-man boxes. And you see Tyrone Tracy making dudes miss, whether it be on the outside or on the inside. This is another thing I like about him. Other than the fact that he's running out of the shotgun a lot, I do think that's not a concern, but he needs to prove that it's going to be a little bit different now that you're new to the position, running from single back and running from all these other formations that are more under center. But you can run counter. Power gap. They did run a lot of power gap and counter, and he ran a ton of zone, and he had a solid feel for each. So he can do either, and I think that's exactly what the New York Giants are going to do when they employ this new rushing attack. I think it's just going to be a mixture of zone and power gap.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. And I will say this, we talked about how he could maybe add instant offense for the Giants with explosive plays. I want to touch a little bit on something you've talked about a lot this weekend, but the new kickoff rules in the NFL. Is this somebody who you think could right away be the best option for the Giants in this new role that is going to have a lot more importance than it ever had?
Probably. I mean,
Okay.
Gunnar Olszewski is a good kick returner, as we saw last year when he returned the kick return for a touchdown against the Rams. And that's why he's going to make this roster more than likely. Isaiah McKenzie is going to factor into that. But I think Tyrone Tracy has enough field vision to know where to go with the football and how to read blocks. And that's going to be very, very high on the totem pole of importance when you have the kickoff rules. Everything is so much more closer, right? You're not going to have these defenders who are going to have a ton of momentum. I'm interested to see how the kick coverage is going to work. Are they like they're going to be playing very conservatively, I would imagine, right?
Oh, like the defenses, you mean?
Like you don't want to get too far upfield, and then that
right.
by the time you just allow
that's going to be cool to watch. You're right. It's going to be almost like because these defenders can't just jam up field from that, because that's how you get killed for the touchdown.
Exactly.
Interesting.
If I was a betting man, I think it's probably going to be either Gunnar or Tyrone Tracy over a player like Isaiah McKenzie. He had one kick return touchdown against Fresno State in week 1 of 2023. He's only had, I think, like 20 or something. I put it up on Twitter. He hasn't returned a ton of kicks, but it's definitely something he could do. And he has the traits to make players miss, and he has enough speed to outrun. I don't think he's the fastest type of running back, but he's fine. I don't think he ever clocked over 20 miles per hour over the last 2 years, which it's not breakaway speed, but it's fine. It's faster than Eric Gray.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's probably feels, at least to me, like a little bit more upside with Tracy versus Gunnar in this role. I like Gunnar more as just a punt returner. You know, he's not going to F up. I feel like a lot of why the Giants like Gunnar is because they had so many F ups at punt returner for such a like extended stretch, but also so concentrated with like, first you have injury to Dory, then you're getting everybody fumbling and losing you games that like, they're like, all right, Gunnar's here. He'll just do the job and we're not going to have an F up with him. But kick return with the new rules, I'd rather get some upside in the mix. So I think he's somebody I'm leaning on, hopefully, to take over that job. We'll see if it actually happens right away, but I know he'll have the opportunity, and he'll be the guy you see when we hear like the beat reporter saying beginning of training camp practice, they're doing practicing the kick returns. I'm sure he'll be in that rotation with Gunnar, with Derek Wright, with like players like that. So excited to see that. Now let's get to the first pick they made on day 3 at 107. They didn't budge, they didn't trade back, they didn't trade up. They took a player that I freaking love. He was not only my guy in this class, he was your guy in this class, Nick. I don't know if we've ever had us draft a my guy. And well, let's just be honest. We both love Malik Neighbors, but I don't think either of us called him a my guy because like we never like to call like the obvious guys my guys, but we both felt like that was one of our guys in this class. So we can kind of put him, but as far as like deeper into the draft, not just like the obvious prospects, we landed one of both of our my guys here with Theo Johnson. So obviously, for those who don't know, you're showing off the spider chart. Do you by any chance have the thing I tweeted? I'll put it up otherwise, which is the athletic comparison between him and Jimmy Graham.
No, you want, go find that.
I'll find that. I'll get back to that. You leave this insane spider. What did you call it? Not a spider chart. You called it tarantula.
Yeah, it's a tarantula, man. This thing is so wide. The only thing that's not perfect is that arm length, which is 49%. It still has 33-inch arms, 11-inch hands, which are absolutely gigantic. And he's over 90th percentile in every athletic testing other than the 20-yard shuttle at the combine, where he was 87th percentile. And when you watch him play, man, I think he's a deceptive route runner. He really is, man. Like at the top of his breaks, he's doing shoulder fakes, he's turning, and then he's pivoting and exploding back in the opposite direction, head fake, shoulder fakes, all those types of things. I don't think this spider chart may give the impression that he is this just, I'm going to run away from everybody type of tight end. I don't necessarily see that type of player on tape. I do think he's a really good athlete, but I don't think he is this burner. And he ran 91st percentile 40-yard dash. I think he's more of, once he gets going, he gets going. I wouldn't say he is the most agile as maybe some of these testing numbers would suggest, although he does have a pretty sick juke move that he employed a couple different times, making defenders look silly, similar to Tyrone Tracy. But overall, I don't think we've even come close to seeing the ceiling of Theo Johnson playing with Penn State. And that's what really gets me excited, because you might have got a tight end 1. Like, he has that upside.
I agree.
And he is he's still like, again, I don't think he maybe plays to this, but he still has very good play speed, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And the number one comparable in that chart is Luke Musgrave, the tight end who I like the most out of last year's class. He doesn't move quite like Luke Musgrave moves. So I think that's like where I can really, hone in on what you're saying, Nick. And like, even in my head, just see the difference in how they move. But I will say this, there are some reps that really caught my attention. Like, there's a rep I put up on Twitter against Illinois where he runs just the seam. And he just destroys his defender in the seam. This is a D-back. And then there's like a red zone route against Illinois where he's matched up against a DB. And again, and this one's, or I think it was against Michigan. And he just destroys him with an inside release. And I'm just like, damn, we're talking about like 220-pound dudes against a 260-pound guy. And somehow this 260-pound guy is burning them. And I'll share this screen now, which is the, I don't know if I can. Can I share the screen? Yeah, there it is, which is the comparison athletically from Theo Johnson to Jimmy Graham, which is just absurd to even see. They were both basically the same height, weight. Theo Johnson, better bench press, similar 40-yard dash, almost the exact same 20-yard split, almost the exact same 10-yard split, vertical jump, broad jump, shuttle was better for Theo, but the 3-cone was better for Jimmy. And I think that's like a real thing. Like, I think Jimmy, 3-cone and shuttle. I've been trying to figure out the difference between them, Nick. And I think change of direction probably is more 3-cone than shuttle. At least that immediate change of direction. And I would agree with you. He may not be the athlete it shows on here, but he's a damn good athlete.
Oh, damn good.
And I think part of the issue as far as why the production was down. Now, he had 7 touchdowns last year, career high. From watching the games I've watched, I've already seen 2 balls that should have been a touchdown. The Illinois ball where he burns the guy and then just gets sailed by Aller. But then there's also just more examples to me, Nick, of just Aller not processing the defense and Theo Johnson wide open and Aller just not throwing the ball his way. Unfortunately for Penn State fans, it wasn't just Theo Johnson. There are a lot of guys open on film. I think Aller, man, like people have said like, oh, we're going to get Aller next year. He'll enter the draft. And I'm just like, I'd have to see a massive jump from Drew Aller. And I love, all I care about is frame and arm talent, things like that. But this dude to me is just horrific quarterback right now, Drew Aller. I'm stunned to see how bad he is watching I'm rewatching Theo Johnson games since his tape. And I'm like, and I remember thinking that when I first went through his tape, I'm like, damn, this dude's bad right now at football, at the quarterback position. Hopefully he can improve. Obviously he's young, but I think there's a lot of untapped potential just from missed reads and from overthrown passes. And the stats back it up, Nick. Do you know that Theo Johnson had the 2nd highest off-target rate of all tight ends in this draft class?
It's not surprising.
That's Drew Aller. Yeah, no, it's not surprising watching him. But in addition to that, Nick, I feel like part of the issue wasn't just bad quarterback play and missed reads or not understanding where he's going to be and when he's open, but also the offense wasn't really designed in a way to feature any of his skills, right? Like this dude is 6'6", 260, running a 4.57 with that kind of change of direction, that kind of burst, 10-yard split, 20-yard split, vertical, broad jump. And they're not really featuring him in any real way in the offense. And that's something that, just might change like at the NFL level. We don't know for sure how the Giants view him. They may view him as somebody they can eventually have as a featured player.
Exactly. And this is somebody who's going to be an upgrade over Darren Waller as a blocker. Yes, he's not Darren Waller quite yet. A lot of people are saying, oh, they drafted Darren Waller. I think Darren Waller is a more fluid athlete than Theo Johnson, which is kind of weird because when you look
people
at this.
People are saying that?
I've seen that on Twitter.
Oh my God. They're not
Darren Waller is very rare as an athlete. There's not a lot of people built like it, but still Theo Johnson, man, one of the aspects of his game that I absolutely love. I talked about the route running. I do think he's deceptive. I think he's sneaky as a route runner. I think he angles his routes well to set up where he's going to break. And there's a little bit of nuance to that. And I don't think, I think we should discuss that a little bit more, but dude, he's like a natural receiver. He has natural receiving skills where he is extending way away from his frame and he is just grabbing the football using the 11-inch hand. Like the guy has gigantic mitts, man, gigantic mitts. And you never really see him drop like easy footballs, right? Like this is why I'm so interested. People are like, oh, he's just the next JPP of tight ends. Just saying like, oh, well, JPP of tight ends, a very athletic tight end that Jerry Reese drafted on day 3. And everyone's like, and Jerry Reese famously said, oh, he's the JPP of tight ends. Robinson, right? I think he went to
Adrian Robinson. Yeah.
Adrian Robinson was at Cincinnati. I think. Yeah. Adrian Robinson. It didn't work out. That's not Theo Johnson. Watch Theo Johnson catch the football. Watch him at the catch point. Watch him at the top of his brace. It is so far advanced over what Adrian Robinson was coming out of Cincinnati. So that is just lazy to me. I absolutely love it. He just has natural receiving. He makes it look easy when he's plucking the football out of the air. And he's a massive target too. This is somebody who's going to be running those seams. We talk about Belly running the seams.
Yeah.
Belly can be kept in and blocked. Belly can run the seam. We know that. Theo Johnson, though, he's a much bigger target than even a Daniel Bellinger. So I can't wait to watch those two tight ends. People are going to look at the Giants tight end room on paper and they're going to say, because Daniel Bellinger doesn't really command respect like we believe he should.
Right.
But I think this is a good tight end room. It's a better tight end room than last year. And we had Darren Waller last year.
Right.
And like, I don't even think that's like crazy to say, which seems just dumb, but there is much more here than I think people who are just looking at the paper would glean.
And I think we'll always feel that way, Nick, because me and you are big fans of two-way tight ends, and that's something we're always going to factor in the blocking more than a lot of other people are. So I know we believe that. But I agree with you with what you're saying. I said it in the My Guys episode a week ago. He has natural hands, and he extends away from his frame to these off-target throws that are horrible and makes these hands catches. Like I put a couple clips on today of just a crazy play where he wins over the middle, breaks on the inbreaker, and the ball's way ahead of him. And if he doesn't have that kind of reach, if he doesn't have those hands, it's an incomplete pass right there. And it's not like the production is not like there at all. He had 7 touchdowns last year, and I said there should have been at least 2, 3, 4 more on the film that he didn't get a chance to get. Oh, I like that you're putting up some tape that you got cut up.
Yeah, but he had I have a lot of tape cut up, and look, I'm not gonna do this a lot because YouTube hates when I do it, but
sure.
I want to show this play. I'm sorry, but finish your point, dude.
No, the point just being like, as far as what we can expect immediately, I immediately find this guy to potentially be one of their best red zone options. He had 7 touchdowns last year. He can be schemed in ways. We already saw what Mike Kafka did with tight ends scheming him up to get touchdowns to the red zone 2 years ago when the offense was a little bit better. And I think it can continue right away this year with this guy becoming one of the best options immediately in the red zone because of his size, because of his hands catching ability, because of all the traits we've discussed.
All right, so I'm going to run this play, and this kind of showcases, I would say, his balance, his ability as a route runner, his savviness, and also those natural receiving skills that we were talking about here against Illinois or Indiana. Well, no, Illinois. Or no, Indiana. I don't know, whatever. Whichever one.
Illinois, yeah.
Yeah. Watch how he releases, and I don't really think this is too clean. He does use his hands well at the point of contact. Right here, the defender kind of gets into his chest. This isn't a win from his press skills, but watch how the defender leans on him and tries to influence Theo Johnson outward. Theo Johnson feels the leverage of the defender at this moment. The defender tries to come off like, "Oh, I'm not holding him," and then watch Theo Johnson just spin off that. That is such a
extend away from us. That's what the example I was discussing too. Watch him extend away. Look at where
beautiful.
look at the, if you can pause it at the catch point. But by the way, I love that the spin that you're talking about, the change direction.
That's
look at how far. Look at that. Yes. Look at that ball is so off target, and most tight ends aren't going to have that kind of even ability to get to that, let alone make that catch.
Let alone the coordination too. The coordination. Right. This is what. Look at those feet. Look at those feet. Get back.
This isn't
this
that
is 200. This is a 6'6" plus 260-pound man moving like that.
And then how many guys did it take to get him down? Then
about 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big time stuff that you're putting up there, Nick. Like, it's very exciting. And also, I want to add this because you mentioned we discussed it before, or we might have discussed it before, or we didn't discuss before, but he lined up in a lot of different ways for Penn State. He wasn't really a focal point in the offense, and I feel like they should have designed more plays for him as first read, but they just didn't. But he was in line 47% as a true Y, slot 38%, out wide 9.8%. I saw a lot of snaps out wide. Some of them were like the big Gronk. You remember like when they had Gronk and Hernandez, and they would sometimes flip it on you, the Patriots, and you wouldn't expect it, and Hernandez would be in line, and Gronk would go all the way out as the boundary, and he would run just like that quick inbreaker slant type, and it would just be so hard to stop because he's just so big. I saw multiple routes of Theo Johnson running that exact Gronk route. The ball didn't come his way, but he won the route. He won the route, and he's so big that you're not going to be able to stop that. It's easy offense. It's simply put easy offense for any quarterback at any level of football. No matter if you're good at processing, the ball's just going to be out in 2 seconds, and he's going to be too big to stop on that play, especially when you have all the attention on the other side, Malik Neighbors or whatever the hell else you got going on over there, Wandell, Malik, Hyatt, all those guys in motion. And then it's just Theo lined up as the boundary in a one-on-one, throw it to him on the quick inbreaker. I could see that working right away for the Giants.
On day one of the draft, did I hear Rich Eisen mention, or it might have been Daniel Jeremiah mention that Dable told them that the Giants might have had like the least explosive offense? Was that something that I dreamed? It's been a very busy like 3 days. But if that's the case, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Theo Johnson, like they added some explosive weapons for Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, whoever the hell their quarterback is going to be this year. It's going to unlock hopefully it's going to unlock a different level to this offense. There's still a lot that, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm optimistic that it will. There's still a lot that needs to happen. Offensive line needs to hold up, quarterback needs to pull the trigger, but at least the weapons are in place for it to happen.
I agree. They have like the 7 touchdowns that he had that I talked about, and it should have been like 10. There was second most among. That's immediately you got your red zone guy. Also, I like the fact, Nick, that, and I just saw this in my notes. He played 243 special team snaps on punt and kick return and kick coverage, I should say. We've got like both these guys, I think, can be weapons for the offense pretty early, but they're also going to like baseline be special teams guys. Like that's what you want. You want to be able to get these two-way guys, special teams and impact offense or defense when you're taking these day 3 picks. And it's something they're getting here. According to Daniel Jeremiah, Nick, he was his 82nd ranked player on the big board. I feel like he was even better. I had him I would have had him ranked even higher if I did a top 100 big board. If Brenton Strange can go in round 2, and you see all these other tight ends, like I like Ben Sinnott, and I do like Ben, and I might have had Ben Sinnott over him if I just had to go. But Ben Sinnott is like the 54th pick in this draft. Getting Theo Johnson 53 picks later, or whatever it was, at 107, like that's value for me too. That's big time value. And I understand he's a little older of a prospect, but doesn't have the same movement skills. But man, we're talking about somebody who's 260, 6'6" at the same time, showing things like you just shown on that Illinois tape, like the ability to extend all the way from his frame after spinning back from the defender. Like that's pretty rare looking. I know anyone who watches football understands how rare that might actually be. He's another guy, by the way, who got really good marks from Greg Gassell, the go-to film analysis. You said he's got noticeable and obvious upside, and he can contribute as a run blocker right away, versatile pass catcher from multiple different alignments, detached alignment, in line. He thinks he can be a contributor right away in year 1 and then develop into a tight end 1. He doesn't say that about everyone. Like a lot of these guys you're going to get on day 3, round 4, 5, 6, you're hoping they're your tight end 2, right? Like that's the best you can maybe get out of these guys, and that's fine. But I think he's got tight end 1 upside, and that to me is just crazy exciting to get this late in the draft.
Oh, he certainly has tight end 1 upside. Absolutely. Because he can block. He can be wide. He's functional as a big slot. You can kick him out backside 3x1X. He can do all of those things. I mean, I'm not going to bring the tape up, but I'll have a breakdown. And everyone pay attention to the channel over the next week or so. I'm going to be dropping videos periodically, breakdowns of all these players. With Theo Johnson, he can get low into contact. This is a big dude, and you could see the I wouldn't say he's the most flexible guy in the world, but he can really bend at the waist and explode low to high into contact as a run blocker, and he keeps his feet going. He is very competitively tough, and when he gets out into space too, Dan, like he's menace out there blocking these small defensive backs, putting his big ass frame in front of these defensive backs and lead blocking for the running back. So we're going to see a lot of that as well. He's going to be a contributor this year. And I think Tyrone Tracy, I think Theo Johnson is going to be, let's look at it this way. Is Theo Johnson going to be more of a contributor in year 1 than Tyrone Tracy Jr.?
Let's can you qualify that a little more? Do you mean statistically? Do you mean snaps?
I mean, who's gonna play more?
Okay, snaps wise.
Yes.
I think Theo Johnson might play more snaps, but I think Tyrone Tracy might contribute more statistically, if that makes sense.
Okay. It's a little bit difficult to quantify about half of the tight end's role statistically, because blocking is such a big part of it. Yep. And I think he's going to be used.
He can pass block too, by the way. Like he looks comfortable to me as a pass blocker. He's not bad in that regard. And I was thinking about what you said, how violent it looked, that clip you posted of him coming around against Michigan and just destroying that defender, that poor defender. Was that Michigan? I don't know who that was, but
that was Ohio State.
And it was just violent Theo Johnson throwing all 6'6", 260 into this dude and just flattening him, literally flattening this guy. Fire to watch that. And you know what? I saw this in Dane Brugler's profile of Theo Johnson. He said the big factor here was Pat Freiermuth had a really big influence over Theo Johnson at Penn State, and really got him to, showed him what it takes to play a physical big boy style of football.
So I want to bring up an interesting point that just kind of dawned on me. Giants selected 3 players in this draft class that had arrests or had run-ins with the law.
Oh, his was like the frat thing, right? Or something like that.
Yeah. I think he got 2 charges against him from one incident at a fraternity house that had to be vetted. It's just interesting that
with Penn State and those frat, wasn't that the like Micah Parsons thing? He did like a weird.
No, I think that was like a hazing thing. And there was, I don't know. I heard things. I don't know it's true. I'm not going to put it back out there and reopen whatever the hell happened at Penn State.
Fair. I like that.
But I think Andrew Phillips did too, if I'm not mistaken. I probably should double check that, but I'm pretty sure in his profile he had something like that as well. So you have Malik Neighbors with the gun charge. You have this incident with Theo Johnson at a frat house. And then Andrew Phillips, as I look up in my notes, I want to say he had something, but I'm not finding it right now. So if that's the case, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sure they
No, it was. Yeah, I have it right here. He had a burglary charge in 2021.
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure the Giants have done work though on it. It just doesn't feel to me.
That was at a frat house as well.
Another frat house running.
Frat houses.
Doesn't feel to me like we're going to get another Kadarius Toney, DeAndre Baker, but you never know when that's going to happen. Those were more typical of the Gettleman era. Hopefully they don't repeat themselves in the Shane era. But one thing I want to bring up, he talked about an interview I saw, shout out Justin NFL at the Senior Bowl, about who he molds his game after, Theo Johnson. He said, I watch a lot of George Kittle film. That's the type of player I want to be at the NFL level. And it's just so funny to me because I was looking at George Kittle's stats in college, and they're just not like, people are like, oh, Theo Johnson, no production. It's like tight ends. It's very hard to see a tight end produce at the collegiate level. Like,
especially in the Big Ten.
George Kittle didn't do it. You know who else didn't do it? And this is a shout out to, I'm trying to find the user now who sent me these numbers. I don't know if I'm going to find it. It was a Twitter, and I apologize for not shouting you out, but and I'm trying to even find the numbers right now, but Mark Bavaro at college, in the college level, no stats whatsoever. I think he had like a career 500. Here it is: 55 passes, 771 yards, 4 touchdowns his entire career. Mark Bavaro at the collegiate level. So I just don't think stats are a good indicator of future success at the tight end position. It's not.
I mean, that is also back in like the 80s.
I know, yeah.
The 80s Notre Dame football.
Yeah. The game was very different, but I just still don't think it's a big indicator personally. Like, I watched the tape, and you have too. I'm going to watch even more. And there are opportunities where Aller just doesn't see him open a lot, or just the pass, like I said, second highest off-target rate of all tight ends from the quarterback. And then in addition, they're not really utilizing him the way they could. So I'm insanely excited about both these players. Like, I did not expect to get 2 potential contributors right away on offense in year one. Like, looking at this class, dude, the first 5 picks the Giants made may all play this year. Some may play 90% of the snaps, the first 2 picks, but the first 5 picks, we might see them contribute in year one. I don't trying to think if that's happened every draft class. I feel like it definitely hasn't every class. Like,
I'm wondering if DJ Davidson would have had more of a role if he didn't tear his ACL.
Maybe.
Belton, no, he ended up he also had the clavicle injury. So maybe if that didn't happen, like, we thought he got benched because he was terrible in run support, but then it came out like, oh, I was dealing with this bad clavicle injury. And we're like, oh, okay. Daniel Bellinger had a big role. Wandale Robinson would have had a massive role.
Didn't play
but that's the thing. It's the third round that really holds the 2022 draft class back. And then, Evan Neal, but he played. Maybe we wish he didn't, but he did play.
Evan Neal. If Evan Neal can just take a jump for us, it's going to make such a difference for this Giants season and future of this team, obviously.
It really would. If he could become 60% of Andrew Thomas.
Oh, my God. That would be amazing.
I know.
Absolutely amazing.
Just slightly more than half of him. Just become that. Just you know what? Avoid the catastrophic mistakes. If Evan Neal can just avoid the catastrophic mistakes, 2nd and 6, we're trying to just pass and we take a sack and it's 3rd and 18 or something. Like, if we could just avoid that, the Giants are going to be in such a better position than they've been over the last 2 years at that specific position.
Just go watch freaking, if you're Evan Neal, go spend 10 hours this offseason. Go and watch DeJuan Jones of the Browns. Just look yourself in the mirror after watching and be like, I am a better athlete than this guy. We're just as big. I'm just as big. I'm just as long, and I'm a better athlete. Just do what he does. How is this guy not losing? Like, what is going on here? Like, you're too big to lose. I thought he'd be too big to lose around the edge, but he's not. He's clearly not, or hasn't been yet. I think injuries have played a big factor here. I hope that part, it's just a speculation on my own end, but I hope I'm right about that, because if he's finally healthy, that maybe could be a contributing factor if he does take the jump, Nick. But anyway, any other, again, like we said with the UCLA linebacker, we're gonna have to take some time to study him. Neither Nick or I has too much on him, but again, Russell Brown, we had on the show, really likes him.
I am curious, just looking at the chat right now, and I have seen this on Twitter, some people being negative about this draft selection of Theo Johnson. I just got to ask, why? This is the 107th pick in the class. This is a value at this point. Yeah, I just please, on the chat, tell me I'm stupid. Like, I have no problem with that, but at pick 107, this is the exact type of player I want to invest in.
I know.
It's the exact type of player I want to invest in.
freak out.
If everything checks out off the field and everything, like this is the player because of you see the natural receiving skills that he does possess. He played in a crappy offense. He tested off the charts. He's massive. He's 260 pounds. He has good run blocking tape as well. He's light on his feet in pass protection when you are in 6-7 man pass protection types of formations. So why would we shit on this pick at 107? It's not like they did it in the second round.
Yeah, if they Brenton Stranged it would be a bit of a risk, though I did like him and I wouldn't have been that angry, but I wouldn't have been happy in round 2. Obviously, that's reach. Round 4, it's like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, it's because Jay Ferris is saying people are saying that he's Kelsey and Gronk. And he said, let's be patient. I was like, if that's why people are being negative on it. No, of course. Okay. If that's why, then yeah, I completely understand it. Definitely have to be patient with that.
225 overall, who just went off the board. Crazy fall for him. Brendan Rice. Just did not. The NFL just didn't.
I think there must have been something maybe off medically with him.
I don't think Johnny Wilson's been picked yet either. Maybe that happened when we were recording.
I think Johnny was picked.
So someone finally took him. Like there's just some weird falls at wide receiver. Troy Franklin comes off the board on day 3. I actually love that he went to the Broncos with Bo Nix, by the way. I think that's like so good for him. But yeah, Nick, let's wrap up here and get. Do we have any super chat or any questions?
Yeah, we have plenty.
Okay.
We gotta get
nice. Good.
Okay. Tuto starts us off. Tuto Asorio. I don't know if I said that correctly.
No, dude. How do you get the Italian names wrong?
I always do it on purpose.
Oh, okay.
But say it.
It went over my head.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I'm great at it, though. I have no shame trying to do it because I know it's going to be funny. But please, you could take it.
I'm going to say it's Tuto Azzurri.
Azzurri. I absolutely love it. And I love how you
check.
Thank you, Tuto, man. You're the best, bro. He's been supporting us for a while. Says massive salutes and respects to Dan and Nick and all diehard Giants fans across the pond. Greetings from our entire rugby club, currently training in UK. Well, judging by your picture, you're jacked. We might bring you in here and play tight end too.
Or maybe tackle. Maybe use another. I like bringing. Bo was the last rugby player who worked. Wasn't there a rugby player who crushed in the NFL?
Yeah, Mailata.
Yeah, Mailata. I thought it was him, but I mean, Tudo, are you 6'8", 340 like Jordan Mailata? If so, call it. Let me know. I'll get the Giants to call you up, buddy. But thank you. Really appreciate the support.
Thanks, Tudo. David Goodman. David, thanks as always. Says I think we actually talked about this with the drafting of Tracy. They given up on Eric Gray? Thanks for all the draft content. Great job as usual. You guys are the best in the business. David, thank you so much for the kind words. We already discussed this a little bit with Tracy and Eric Gray. I'm not going to say that they gave up on Eric Gray. It's just competition for Eric Gray. It's going to force Eric Gray to raise his level of play. And I do think Tracy is a different type of player than Eric Gray as well.
Yep. You nailed that one.
John Fuller says, and thank you so much, John, largely very happy with the draft. No question. Just sending love from UK. Not often you boys are live while I'm up. John.
There you go. Thank you, John. Really appreciate you guys supporting us.
Really appreciate that. I might head out to the UK for that Met game.
Nice.
That's going on. Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
You have the advantage of being able to fly anywhere you want, which I like.
I do. Yes. So that's something Diana wanted to do. So if I'm out there, John, tell me what I got to go see wherever the Mets are playing.
Wait, when are the Mets playing in the UK?
June, this year, like mid-June.
Oh, sweet. That's a cool trip.
Yeah. I haven't been to the UK yet. Nice. D-Kit. Thank you so much. Says very predictable draft for Shane, don't you think?
I guess I know some people have been saying he drafts for need or whatnot. I don't know, man. Like, sure, it's predictable, but I don't know if I care that it's predictable, quote unquote. I guess they drafted a lot of top 30 visits, filled out some needs, like getting a lot of good players. Like I tweeted this out, D-Kit. If you trust Daniel Jeremiah and his analysis, the Giants got 4 of the top 82 players in this draft, and 2 of them were at pick 70 and 107. The guy they got at pick 70 was his 51st rated player, and the guy they got at 6 was his 4th rated player. Like, I'm not going to get mad if we're going to take players that are top 30 visits. Like, I'd rather be predictable than reach for Cordell Flott and Josh Azuto types. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Like, I gave him credit for those. I was hoping for the best. There's traits. Maybe they develop. But in the end, things aren't looking great on either front right now, if we're going to be honest with Azuto and Flott. And both were considered reaches at the time. And, I don't love the Gettleman style of we know more than you. I'm going to take my guy no matter what. If it's, predictable, fine, as long as they work out.
Yeah, D-Kit. Dan hit it. And I wouldn't say predictable. I just think value fell to them, and they got some good guys on day 3. That's more so where I'm at with that. Peter, thank you so much. Pasquarelli, he says, Dan, I thought the Arch Manning comment from last week was a clear joke with the yes or yes. In that vein, what should quarterback strategy be moving forward, assuming Daniel Jones is out after this year?
Yeah, I don't always do the best job of understanding jokes online. I'm very bad at this, both on Twitter and in general. I'm not good. I just can't read them right. But yeah, Arch Manning, that's not a real plan. As far as what should the quarterback strategy be, assuming Jones is out after this year, I think with the Giants, you can't really fully assume Jones is going to be cut, even with that massive contract hit the year after, because it could be similar to last season, offseason, where they didn't have any better option and didn't feel like they could get one in the draft. Because I think there's a chance the Giants win games this year. They've done a lot in this draft and this offseason. I don't think it's impossible the Giants can win games this year. They would have won a lot more games last year without the injuries. They came close to winning more games last year when they lost some close games. I could see, and I'm not going to make predictions now, but I could see a world where they win 7 to 10 games next year, in which case they can't draft a quarterback again, most likely. And they won't be able to trade up for one, most likely. And, as far as what the strategy is going forward, this is part of why, looking at this, Nick, and I'll bring you into this because I want to hear your thoughts on this, but this is, touches a little bit more 30,000 foot view. It's part of why there's frustration with fans over not getting a quarterback in this class, because the real answer for your Peter is there is no strategy. There's no way to plan this thing. That's just the reality of quarterbacks in the NFL. The Giants aren't the only team in this situation. Essentially, at this point, they have to luck into a quarterback. They have to either bottom out, I guess, in a draft and trade and be in a position to draft one, and it also has to be a good draft class, or be in a lucky position where they can trade up for one, which is very rare these days because teams just restart the rookie contract sale, or luck into the situation where I guess like a Rodgers or Stafford is available for trade, and you can do that. Like, who's the next disgruntled quarterback? Is it Trevor Lawrence? Maybe. I doubt it because he's from that area.
I love how you go with like the top guy, right? Like that's like the dream scenario. Hate where you are, Trevor.
Yeah, or Josh Allen. Did he ever get pissed?
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think so, because Josh Allen loves Buffalo and the fan base in the area, and they don't want to deal him no matter what. And Trevor loves Dret, so you can't really do that. So there's no way to really predict this, I guess, is my answer, because even with those two potential likely candidates, it's just essentially luck at this point, if I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, and that's the reality of the situation.
There's still so much that has to happen. And just to your initial point on the Giants winning some games, look, the Giants are playing the NFC South and the AFC North. The AFC North is good, but the NFC South has a lot of beatable teams. And then they play like the Colts and the Vikings and teams that they could possibly squeak a victory against. The schedule doesn't look as rough as it did last year, where they opened up against just an absolute slaughterhouse row of teams.
And I think they might have solutions for Jalen Hurts, seeing so much tape on him. So I think they might have a chance. They beat the Eagles once last year. They might have a chance there too. Washington obviously headed in the right direction. We'll discuss that on next week, but on our draft recap of the NFC East. But rookie quarterback, they can lose games like that. There's not a guarantee you're going to win with a rookie quarterback. Stroud did it last year. It doesn't always happen that way. So the Giants, in my mind, could easily win 7 to 10 games this year. We'll get to that more as the season goes. But in that case, there's no quarterback in sight, really, as far as planning goes. You just,
Yes. Jay Ferris, thank you so much, buddy. Outstanding draft coverage from you guys. Really exceeded expectations.
Oh, thank you, Jay Ferris. Really appreciate that.
I always really appreciate talking with Jay Ferris. And D-Kit, thank you so much. He says, I think the Giants got better with this draft, but have they improved relative to our division rivals? Because that is the more important factor, in my honest opinion.
Let's think about that. Have they improved? Well, I mean, our division rivals all had great drafts. So if you're just going based on the draft, maybe the answer would be no, I guess. But
I'm scared of Washington because I think Adam Peters is smart.
Had a good draft. He had a great draft. He had a great first draft. And it sucks because they've had so many just iffy drafts in a row.
Dude, when you were in charge of that team, they sucked all the time. It was great.
They sucked. And Ron Rivera wasn't good at it either. Like, it was just a constant. So I got that joke there. But, it wasn't great either. And maybe they could put me back in charge so I can sabotage the team. But I'll say this, D-Kit. You ask me and Nick, we're not as high on Jaden Daniels as the consensus, and I see some red flags there.
I mean, we definitely see red. There's definitely red
flags too,
but there's a lot of upside.
There's upside. I don't want to dismiss it.
He's a good kid too.
He's a good kid.
We went over.
24 years old and 100. No, we can. I mean, just in case somebody hasn't heard it, he's also 24 years old, 184 pounds. Probably has no room to grow into his frame more than he already has. Scrambled 100 more times than Malik Willis. When he scrambles, he puts his head down, and he didn't use the middle of the field in college at all, the intermediate middle. So it's not a guarantee. I do love his smooth throwing motion. I love how effortless it is for him. I love his speed. I love it. He's a good kid. So, and I think he should.
Cliff Kingsbury.
No, I think that's a negative for him.
That's my point. Yeah.
It's not like and I'll say this, as far as like your division rival thing goes, I hate to say it because it feels mean and it's weird because the film in 2022 was phenomenal, but the film in 2023 for Jalen Hurts was not that good. And I'm not as sold on Jalen Hurts after last year. And I know a lot of Eagles fans I talk to feel the same way. And Dallas, they're in salary cap hell with Dak Prescott coming up on a new contract. They may lose Dak, they may lose Micah, or they may lose Lamb. They're not going to be able to re-sign all three of those guys. So I don't necessarily know if the trajectory for those teams is as high as it seems on paper.
John Curley, thank you so much, John. Always supporting us. Says, thank you guys for great content. It's difficult to be excited because they are rolling with DJ. Insanity. If lockout plays, hope they make the change quickly.
Look, John, I think it's okay and fair for fans to feel this way. I know, people online are like, I hate these people who say things like John is saying. And I think those people are jerks about it. You're allowed to think this. Like, Daniel Jones has been not good these first 5 years on a full sample size. I understand the situation sucks, but come on, guys, let's take a step back and realize we're in year 6 and we're not sold on the guy. So people like John are allowed to feel this way. And so I think it's fair to not be excited about that, but also be excited about the value they got in this draft and the direction they've gone with upside in day 3 and potential guys that fit the system in day 2. And who I really honestly believe, Nick, at 20 years old, Malik Neighbors could be one of the best receivers in the NFL in the next 5 years. I don't think that's hyperbole. I think that's how high of an evaluation I have on him and these types of wide receiver prospects. So I think you can be happy about what they did in the draft, but also not feeling great about the quarterback situation.
It looks like John's picture on YouTube, like the marble. I am inevitable.
Yeah, that. Yeah.
It looks like he's fading away, and Thanos got you, John. But thank you so much.
And one final thing to say about the lock thing. Maybe they will give him a chance, honestly. Like, I don't think that it's going to be impossible to see that,
Yeah, they're going to give him a chance if Daniel Jones shits the bed. Brian Dable's going to know that.
I think he's asking for a fair comp, not that.
Yeah. Now, I think Daniel Jones is going to receive, unless he's terrible in training camp, but they also have the injuries. Like, he's not ready medically, which could be true, too. So he could be given to Locke.
Getting all those reps in the spring with the first team offense. That's worth a lot.
Sergio Rodriguez, thank you so much. I like this draft class, but the quarterback position is kind of a bummer, almost to the point where I'd rather see what Drew Lock can do. Sick of DJ, honestly. John and Sergio.
I know a lot of fans feel this way. Look, you guys are not the only ones. You guys want to see what a different quarterback can do within his offense. You saw a little bit of it last year with Tyrod Taylor and DeVito. So I understand that. We'll see what happens there. I think Daniel Jones is going to probably, what Nick said, is probably going to play out what Nick and I discussed yesterday, which is no competition for Locke and just Jones is the guy. And if Jones falters, Locke will come in. Hopefully, but the problem with that scenario, Nick, is like, if that happens, the Giants are then out of the playoffs already. So who cares? Like, if we get to see Locke,
See, that's why I'm not certain if that's going to happen either, because this could be something where you do look at the injury guarantee.
That's what I'm thinking. Right.
And Drew Lock is playing well. And you have a guy who is coming off of a knee injury, possibility of him being re-injured. It could just be defaulted to Drew Lock, depending on how he adapts to the system. Like, I still don't think we know what exactly is going to happen, but I wanted to get a counter to what Sergio and John said. And that's from Ken Chiofredi. Ken, thank you so much. I know people are done with Jones, but the Giants added easy explosives with Neighbors, Johnson, and even Tracy. Something we didn't do the last few years.
Yeah, Jones
tried to, just didn't really work.
Yeah, agreed. And, on that front, that's the key there, because Jones is going to have his best weapons he's ever had in his career as a starter with the Giants. And I do think there's some concern, not just the injury guarantee about 2025, but with the fact that he's coming off an ACL and his highest EPA plays throughout his career have been his scrambles and his runs. And that could be something that takes a hit because he's coming off the ACL. He may not be the same runner he was. So he's going to have to rely more on his arm. And now, like Ken says, he's finally going to have the best weapons of his career in Neighbors, obviously Hyatt, Wandell, Johnson coming out of the backfield, using him in motion. Like, there's exciting talent on this offense to go around with him if the O-line can hold up. So I'm not like, I know some fans are going to hate to hear it. I know if Sal in Queens listens to this episode, he's going to be disgusted with what I'm about to say, but I'm not totally out on Jones just yet within this, not obviously ceiling wise. Let's not be crazy here. I don't think he's going to evolve into Josh Allen or Justin Herbert, but maybe he can be productive and evolve as a passer in some way, even if it's not 2-level jump or a 3-level jump as a passer for Jones, even if it's just a 1-level jump as a passer for Daniel Jones with better talent around him. That could be something that can win you football games if your defense takes a jump.
All righty. Ken, thank you so much again. Ryan H., disappointed. No offensive line help.
I
But we
understand
said
that.
this, Dan. Look, we said this. They
Yep.
put themselves in a position where they didn't have to take an offensive lineman. There was no desperation to take an offensive lineman. Look, some of the players that they have that are developmental, we might be done with them, but the Giants might not be. The Josh Azudus, even the Marcus McKeithans. And if the Giants were to select an offensive lineman, especially McKeithan, he's done. He's not making the roster. There's only going to be a finite amount of spaces for offensive linemen, especially when you go out and you sign 4 in free agency.
Right.
So it's not surprising that they didn't. I'm there with you. I'm always about investing in trenches, but not if the value is not there. And if you like other players, go and get those players over filling I'm going to still say it's a need on the offensive line, but they at least have the contingency plans in place to bring in veterans to compete on this roster and not rely on these guys who have no clue what they're doing in the interior parts of their offensive line, which they've done through 2 or 3 different regimes at this point.
I think you nailed it, Nick. I think, look, we went into this thing understanding as a fan base, and I understand why you're disappointed, Ryan. I don't think it's a crazy thing to feel. And the same thing could be said if you're disappointed we didn't get any interior defensive linemen. But we went into this thing, Ryan, and you were on board with us with this, saying we're not going to be able to fit every hole in one draft. We're not. It's just it's not going to happen. I know you like that one. Fix every hole, not fit. Fix every hole in one draft. It's just not going to happen. And the Giants may have looked at this thing, Ryan, and said, we've tried to go the rookie draft route with our O-line and put a lot of young guys in there, and communication's been awful. They can't communicate with each other. They're giving up stunts. We're going a different route now. We're going to add veterans, Schlotman, Runyon, Illuminor, Stinney, maybe even guys who have played in the NFL and have actual real life NFL reps. So we're not screwed. And so maybe they felt like, I don't really want to draft over those guys this year because I want those guys to be our depth. Because if we get put in the position, we have to go to these guys. I want someone who's actually played in the NFL, who actually has done it before. And I don't want some rookie who can't communicate and pick up stunts. So I don't really hate it as much as I thought I would. Now, I do like drafting an O-line every year, and I like trying to develop them. But I also think back to what I heard from, what was it? Willie Colon, not Willie Colon, one of those old Steelers linemen who was on with PFF guys. But what he said was, NFL is not a developmental league. And he says that's the biggest issue with, they're asking, why is there such a bad O-line shortage around the NFL? NFL is not a developmental league. You can't just draft and develop O-linemen because if you're not playing, you're not developing. You're not getting enough in practice. You're not getting enough in the practice squad. It's not live. It's not real. You're not actually developing in that stage. So I almost wonder if I'm still okay taking blue chip type linemen, Nick, but to fill out my roster, I kind of want guys who have played in the NFL and proven they can do it, I should say.
Look, development for a first round or a second round developmental option, that could happen. The Tyler Smiths of the world. It's going to depend on the kid, the situation, a lot of different things, because the coaching staff is going to be really motivated to develop that player because that's a high asset. But if you're a 6th round developmental, how many snaps are you getting? Right? You really need to just be like, I'm on your roster, coach. I'm here. Okay, please. I'm good. And you need to stick out far above other players who are also doing their damnedest to make that roster. So you're right. It's not a developmental league, but those first round picks, they're going to get a lot of attention to develop, and they're going to get the nurturing that they need to develop. Whereas the day 3 guys are not.
Right. Great point.
Jay Ferris, thank you so much again, says, seeing how Adoree is still hanging around with not much interest, what do you guys think of bringing him back with the cap savings from Waller's retiring? Cornerback still weak. I'm not certain that there's not going to be teams interested. I think Adoree was waiting for after the draft, and there might be teams that are going to come in and outbid the New York Giants, but I am certainly open to bringing him back if those teams are not interested at the right price.
I think it's a great idea, Jay Ferris. I do think from my evaluation of him, he's a better fit for Wink's system. But I think he can play off coverage too, and I think he can be fine within this system and still a good player for them. And he's a veteran presence, which they kind of still need in that room. It's a very young corner room right now. I mean, Deonte Banks, if they don't re-sign Adoree, like you're saying, Deonte Banks is kind of now the leader of the cornerback room in year 2 of his life as a football player. It's kind of a little bit insane from that standpoint. I know they have some other guys, but he's the real leader. No one's going to Cordell Flott for advice. I mean, he's not the same level player. I do think, though, Jay Ferris, that this extra cap space from Darren Waller retiring will be used for the interior defensive line, if I had to guess.
LL Cool John, thank you so much, said, excluding Neighbors, whose jersey would you be willing to buy from this draft?
Good question, LL Cool John. I'm going to answer first and say none, and I'll tell you why. I have a very, very bad track record of buying Giants jerseys. It seems like when I buy them, they get injured. And I know a lot of fans have shared this similar experience with me, and they say that's the case. So it's probably just a matter of the Giants have had a lot of bad, unlucky injuries throughout their career. But I'm talking Cruz, Knicks, Jeremy Shockey. Then he gets traded like a year later. The only one that I've been able to buy and hang on to is Eli Manning. And so I just basically that's my one jersey at this point. I haven't bought a jersey since.
I don't do jerseys, bro.
Yeah, I knew you weren't a jersey guy.
Yeah, so this might be pretentious or whatever, but I'm in my 30s, and I just, it's just not something I'm not going to wear a jersey of someone who's 15 years younger than me or whatever. But I'll always wear like Mark Bavaro, Eli Manning, Justin Tuck.
Oh, like, so age. Yeah, I got you.
But you know what? I also don't have kids right now. Like when I do multiply, I probably will default and buy jerseys because my kids are going to be all motivated and be like, oh yeah, I love the player. So like at that point I would, but as of right now, I'm not really a jersey guy personally. Peter Almo says, does the season, and thank you so much, Peter, does the season depend on Neil again? If Illuminor has to start, is there enough depth? When we move on from DJ, if we've won too many games, what do we do? Cousins? Dak? So let's tackle the second part of that question first. I'm open to Dak Prescott at the right price if the quarterback position just implodes. And I didn't consider the Cousins thing, but I don't know what the hell is going on in Atlanta. I have no idea what they were thinking in the first round. So
I think the way that's structured, though, it's like a 2-year out.
I think it is too. So as we said on the recap of the first round, Michael Penix Jr. is going to start when he's like 27, 28 years old. It's going to be the next Brandon Wheaton.
Yeah, he is. Which is crazy, by the way. The next Brandon Wheaton.
I don't know why they. Whatever. It's not my team, but
yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, look, like they could have just got Romo Dunze. I know they have receivers, but now you have Romo Dunze too. It's freaking weird. It's just odd what Atlanta was doing. Because I know they didn't they looked at it like we have so many, like they didn't have that many holes and they didn't love the defenders in this class. So they're like, let's just do it. Let's do the quarterback of the future.
I think Rappaport or Shefty said that they were trying to trade back up in the first round to get one of those defenders, which makes it even more confounding if that's true.
Yeah, it's so weird.
If that's true, it's just like, what are you doing? And you didn't tell the quarterback that you just guaranteed over $100 million to. It's just so many. It's to the point where I'm just like, did something possess your body, Terry Fontenot and the Atlanta Falcons front office? Did something possess your body, and then you just did this like without thinking it through? Like, I mean, could you have traded back? I don't know if some of those other teams. There's so many things that's like, you knew that you would have had a chance at Michael Penix Jr. You knew it. So why did you not communicate that to Kirk Cousins?
I don't know.
It's a weird situation, man.
To answer the question though, Peter, I have some thoughts on this, and I want to get back to the first part of this too, Nick. So let's first do the second part. It's loaded for me when it comes to Cousins or Dak potentially being the Giants quarterback, and I'll tell you why. On one hand, I can look at it like Matthew Stafford never won any games with the Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford never took them on a run, and then he went to Los Angeles and he won them a Super Bowl. But in my mind, Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than both of these quarterbacks, and he's better fit for Sean McVay's system, and I love his arm talent. And in my mind, he had a much, 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 much worse situation than Cousins had. And then you can take that 2 levels up to say a much, much worse situation than Dak had. I don't necessarily know the Giants are ever going to be able to provide him, Dak Prescott, a better situation than the Cowboys have at some points of his career. CeeDee Lamb, elite O-line, at times elite defense with Parsons. It's hard to get that kind of team around him. So I almost look at it like if Jones they win too many games and Jones, you come back the next year and you say, Jones, here's what's going to happen. We're going to cut you. You can come back to the team at this cheap price. If you don't want to do this, here's what we're doing. We're going to the free agent market, and Tyrod's going to start for us this season, or a Tyrod type is going to start for us. Not Tyrod Taylor at that point, or, a Gardner Minshew type is going to start for us this season. Because I don't personally believe that Gardner Minshew is that much of a drop off from like the Daniel Jones types of this world. And obviously he's a drop off from the Cousins Dak. But if the Cousins Dak doesn't get you anything real and you need a perfect team around them and then they still don't make runs, that's not something I care about striving for at that point. So on paper, it feels better to get a Dak, but I got to be honest with you, Nick, that's one of our things we may not be on the same page about. I don't know if I care about getting a Dak or Cousins on this roster personally.
I do, because I think Dak and Cousins will throw the ball deep to these explosive.
It'll be more fun to watch, but yes, it's going to be better. It's going to make Neighbors' career better. It's going to bring out the best in Hyatt and all those guys. But it ultimately, because he's going to get 60 million cap hit, right?
That's
ultimately, you're not getting any kind of bargain with either of these two guys. So ultimately, where's the ceiling? And that's where I need to believe that it's a Stafford situation where they just need a change of scenery and they can be amazing. I'm not so sure I'm sold on that with Dak or Cousins.
I think that's a good point. I do.
Yep.
I just know that it would be an upgrade over anything the Giants have had since Eli Manning was their quarterback.
That for sure.
And I would say a big upgrade too, to some degree.
Yes.
A different type though, because the big part of this offense where it gets interesting is Daniel Jones's mobility, which I hope he still has once he recovers from these injuries. Neither of those players have that.
To the first part of that question, by the way, which we didn't answer, I don't think it's Evan Neal. And this goes back to a big debate we always have on this pod, Nick. To me, the season depends on Daniel Jones again, and it will always depend on Daniel Jones or whoever the quarterback is. The O-line, second most important to me. The quarterback, most important by a massive landslide to the next tier. He can do everything for you if he takes that jump. And so that's just where I stand on that.
Yeah, if Illuminor is there enough depth? I'll tackle that part of the question. I think there's more depth, better depth than there was last year. Say if Evan Neal sucks. Say if Evan Neal is healthy, but he sucks at right tackle, you kick him inside the guard, he would figure it out. I mean, he has experience doing that at Alabama. Now, if Evan Neal gets, you would hope. Now, if Evan Neal gets hurt, let's just say he just disappears, Thanos gets him, whatever, right? Illuminor kicks out the right tackle. You have Runyon. You still have Stinney as a swing guard at that point. Schlottman as a swing center, or just the backup center, I should say. So, I still think that's a better situation than what the Giants were in last season, as long as Andrew Thomas stays healthy.
I'm on board with that.
Okay. James Bussold. James, thank you so much for the donation. My guy, Jamie. Dan and Nick, great job as always. Really enjoy all your work. What's your favorite pick? Go Giants. Now, what's our favorite pick relative to the value the Giants spent on?
Yeah, because if you just said favorite pick, it's Malik Neighbors, obviously, but we're talking about value-wise. So for me, it's obviously going to be one of these picks on day 3 because they were both my guys. And I'm going to go with Theo Johnson. I just have really good expectation for Theo Johnson in the NFL.
I like Theo Johnson. I think I'm still going to go Malik Neighbors, and that sounds like I'm just kind of being a dick.
Even at the value, I like that.
But I think you nailed it before, man. And we talked about it pre-draft. I think he has top 5 in the NFL. You're talking about Jamar Chase level type of talent.
He's only 20 years old. This is the craziest thing about him.
I think he's 21 now, but
okay, let's say he's 21 now. When he reaches his second contract with the Giants, he's going to be 26 or 25 or 26 years old, hitting the absolute prime of his career on his second deal if he hopefully signs a second deal with the Giants. That part of it to me, and he still has room to grow into his body at that age, and he's already a strong ass athlete.
He'll be 21 in training camp. Yep,
in camp. Okay, but he still has room to grow into his body, and he's already a beast from a strength standpoint and a contact balance standpoint. So I'm fine with that pick, even at pick 6. I think the upside of him, you're not going to get that kind of receiver in every draft class.
100%. Jason Benjamin. Jason, thank you so much. We can't say we trust Dabes and Shane, but then question them in their evaluation of DJ. They were not forced to give him that contract. Fans need to realize he is starting this year. Let's support.
I mean, and on one hand, that's true, Jason. But on the other hand, the NFL is a desperation league at quarterback. They didn't have any options going into last offseason, and they had just won a playoff game, and they were trying to keep the locker room together, and they re-signed Barkley, and they brought back Jones. So at the time of making that contract, if you think them giving that contract was, we're all in on Daniel Jones, he's the best quarterback in the league, you guys are all wrong. The O-line's been so bad, this and that. He's top 5, you'll see. You're probably wrong, to be honest, Jason. I'm just going to be honest with you. But they did think that he's going to be better than he was in 2022. They thought he'd evolve and take a jump, and he still can this year. But don't tell me that them signing that contract is them saying that you guys are all wrong. And there's dynamic to it. There's supply and demand in the NFL.
It's a layered situation. It's not, It's never as simple. It's I don't want to say it's a facile way to look at it, Jason, but they constructed an out for a reason in that contract. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option for a reason. He played well. They won a playoff game. They were trying to strike while the iron's hot. Let's add an athletic tight end to enhance this offense. None of that worked out. But again, man, and I know I say this so much, but the offense wasn't explosive in 2022.
Right.
Most of their explosive plays were on the back of 26. Were on the back of Saquon Barkley, and they were not throwing the football down the field. And if you watch that game against Seattle, there were plenty of times where Darius Slayton was open down the field, burning rookie sensation Tariq Woolen, and the ball was just not coming out. That's a problem.
It's I still think you're right in some extent, Jason. It's time let's support Daniel Jones, that may be the best we have this year at quarterback. Yes, and they obviously evaluated him enough to re-sign him. But like Nick said, there was a 2-year out, and let's not act like was the Justin Herbert situation where the Chargers don't even give a single visit to any of these quarterbacks. The Giants spent an insane amount of resources studying this quarterback class, bringing them in for private visits. They spent more private visits, top 30 on the quarterback position than any other position. And then they almost traded up for a quarterback. They tried to trade up for a quarterback. I shouldn't say almost. Patriots, as we're learning today, never really actually considered trading down, even though it's rumored to be that they listened, but they weren't actually going to do it. So like, this is just not the same scenario as your Joe Burrow or your Justin Herbert. So it's fine to say that they gave him the contract with a 2-year out, but don't act like this is just like they think he's the next Herbert or Burrow or whatever. Please.
Christian H. Thank you so much, Christian. And thank you, Jason. What's up, guys? I don't get fan hate as a general manager. You either do what you can to trade up for your quarterback or build the roster around the quarterback. It takes two to make a trade.
100%, Christian. That's what I was just saying, and I feel strongly about it. It takes two to make a trade. The Patriots listened to the Giants. The Giants gave an offer that some people feel wasn't good enough. I feel it was. I heard the Vikings gave an even better offer, and ultimately the Patriots said no. And you want to know how I know the Patriots made the decision on Drake May? Months before this, maybe weeks before this, their entire draft class after this was set up a certain way to build around Drake May. Receiver, offensive line. They had a plan in place, right? You get your franchise quarterback, and then you build around him. That's been in months of planning. The Patriots didn't just pick that up and decide to do it on the fly.
To be fair, they needed to do it.
No, they needed to.
They needed to do it.
They asked for it as well. But it felt to me like there was a clear plan. If you look at the receivers they drafted, they fit, in my opinion, what Drake May can do as a quarterback as well. So I think this was predetermined. And I think you're 100% right, Christian. It takes two to make a trade. I can't get mad at Joe Schoen. He tried to trade up, and he just couldn't pull it off, just like the Vikings GM couldn't pull it off. And they liked McCarthy enough. The Giants did not like McCarthy enough to draft McCarthy.
Jay Ferris, thank you so much again. Jay Ferris says, great content, guys. I can hang here all night. Well, Jay Ferris, we would love for you to hang with us. I know you guys got to go soon, but what is the threshold for pulling Evan Neal or cross-training him at guard? How do you see it playing out?
I know we talked about this, a couple podcasts ago, Nick. It's really interesting to me. I don't love it because I think it's a confidence killer. And that's my whole thing. I think if you tell Evan Neal, we're putting you at guard, he's shot from a confidence standpoint. And I think one of the biggest issues for him right now in his NFL career has been confidence. So that's my main reason for it. I want to kind of, once again, give him at least to start training camp. You're our starting right tackle one, but I'm okay pulling the plug earlier. And you know what? Maybe then you start cross-training him at guard. I mean, even in training camp, if it's not going good, in the preseason, if it's not going good. And you'll know on tape, obviously it's not full defensive scheming in preseason, but he's still going to have to get into a pass set and try to block in preseason. And so if you still see some of the same issues, that may be the time to pull him, and then you start cross-training at guard.
I think Dan nailed that one. Jay Ferris, thank you so much for tuning in with us.
Yeah, thank you, Jay Ferris.
That's it, bud.
All right, that was the last one. Thank you to everybody who was a super fan today. Thank you everybody who supported the show in any way you have, by watching our streams, by downloading the podcast, listening to the podcast.
Jason Benjamin just came in, said, so what quarterback would have won last year with all the injuries to our O-line and devoid of weapons? Our roster last year was not good regardless of quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but that doesn't really prove that they think he's an elite quarterback, Jason. And again, I supported what you said. I said, we'll get behind him. And I agree. There's going to be, like I said earlier, this is the best chance he's going to have to evolve as a passer and become a greater player. So, I think we're close to on the same page, Jason. I think you may just feel a little bit more strongly about where he's at. And again, we're going to get behind it. We're going to support it. We don't have any other options right now, right? It's Drew Lock, Daniel Jones. And like Nick and I have said throughout this podcast in the last couple of days, we think Daniel Jones will be given the QB1 job with no competition. So we're going to get behind that. He's going to hopefully be the guy to deliver them some wins this year.
I think that was well put. And Jason, thank you again.
And thank you for the donation, by the way, Jason, and the support of the show. And to everybody who supports the show, thank you so much. Streams every night. We've had a lot of fun this draft weekend. It's been, as usual, very fun. It's always good to see it culminate with the actual draft after all the work that we put in with the interviews. And I wanted to save some this year. And as I mentioned before, so we're gonna have some fun post-draft interviews recapping the Giants draft. I think that's a good use of some of the experts we've had on, instead of just previewing it, giving us a bunch of names that ultimately the Giants don't draft any of, or one of. Let's get the guys they actually drafted, and let's hear the expert thoughts on these players and how they fit the Giants. So I'm very excited for that in the coming weeks, Nick. And I love post-draft coverage too. So I'm excited to talk Giants draft with you, NFC East draft, all that good stuff, get into the film. So for everybody else, Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you tomorrow because we're going to do our, overall thoughts, 30,000 foot view, probably Sunday night. Look for that at night tomorrow. So have a good rest of your weekend and go Giants.